Zechariah was there. He was there, but he wasn't there. And you've experienced it. You've been with someone, physically present with someone, but they are not engaged. They're not engaged with you. They're not tuned in with you or with others around them. They're distracted, usually by a phone, or they're simply somewhere else in their thoughts, shutting out their immediate environment. There, but not there. Well, that was Zechariah. 9 months earlier, something had happened to Zechariah in the temple in Jerusalem. 9 months earlier, Zechariah was serving in the temple in Jerusalem because Zechariah was a priest. And 2 weeks a year, Zechariah was on duty in the temple, leading God's people in worship. Well, this particular year, he was chosen to burn incense on the altar of incense. This was a once-in-a-lifetime duty for a priest. This was a once-in-a-lifetime honor for a priest. While Zechariah offered incense to the Lord, while he offered prayer to the Lord, an angel appeared to him. The angel Gabriel appeared to him and brought good news. Zechariah would have a son. He and his wife Elizabeth were childless, and they were past childbearing years, but God was going to make the impossible possible. God would work the miraculous. Elizabeth would bear a son, and they were to name him John. John would have a prophetic ministry, preparing God's people, making God's people ready for the Lord. For the Lord himself was coming in person, in the flesh. Well, Zechariah heard this good news and he could not believe. He would not believe. He knew his age. He knew his wife's age. He understood biology. And so the angel Gabriel punished Zechariah for his unbelief. He lost the ability to speak. He was mute, dumb, and probably deaf until the words of the angel came to be. So Zechariah was there, but he was not there. He couldn't speak. He couldn't hear. For the most part, he was trapped in his own head, trapped with his own thoughts. And then the day arrived, the joyful day. Elizabeth gave birth. In her old age, she had a son. Zechariah had a son. The impossible became possible, and Elizabeth was filled with joy, thankful for what God had done. And all their neighbors rejoiced, their community rejoiced, thankful for what God had done, making the impossible possible. But Zechariah is not even mentioned in this rejoicing. Elizabeth, yes. The neighbors, yes. Zechariah, no. He was there, but he wasn't there. Then 8 days passed, and the time came for the baby to be circumcised. The 8th day after a baby boy was born was the day of circumcision, where the child would receive the sign of the covenant, a mark in the flesh, showing that he belonged to God, that he belonged to God's people, that he was an heir to the promises given to Abraham centuries before. So the neighbors gathered, the community gathered for this joyful celebration, and part of the ceremony of circumcision was naming the child. Everybody there was ready to call him Junior. Everybody there thought that he should be named after his father. After all, this was their only child. Surely they would want the name to be carried on. But Elizabeth says, no, his name is John. And surely this is what Zechariah communicated to her. This is what the angel had told him, that their son was to be named John. Well, the neighbors were scandalized. John? You don't have anybody in your family with that name. Your father, your grandfather, your brothers, your uncles, your great uncles, not even your cousins have the name John. Well, what Elizabeth felt that day is the same that all parents potentially face when choosing a name for their child. Namely, a negative reaction from family their friends about the name, which is why some parents choose to keep the name of their child a secret. They just don't want the pressure. You can't name the boy John. It can't be John. Surely it's Junior. Let's ask his father. So they asked Zechariah. He was there, but he wasn't there. Couldn't speak, couldn't hear. He may not even have known what the discussion around him was about. So our text tells us that the neighbors made signs to him, hand gestures to him, charades, somehow making him understand their question. And their question was, "What is your son's name?" Now Zechariah is there. He asks for a writing tablet, and the gathered crowd quiets, and all eyes are on the old man as he writes. And then he holds up the tablet for all to see. John. His name is John. Now, if those gathered were not amazed enough at the answer, they become even more amazed at what happens next. Listen again to verse 64. And immediately his mouth was opened, and his tongue loosed, and he spoke, blessing God. The words of the angel Gabriel came true. After the birth of his son, Zechariah spoke. After 9 months and 8 days, Zechariah talked. He'd been silent, there but not there, trapped in his own thoughts, but now he speaks. And what are his first words? Blessing. Praise. Zechariah worships the Lord. And he does so through song. In fact, he does so through a Christmas hymn. Zechariah sings the second Christmas carol. We looked at the first Christmas carol last week, Mary's Magnificat. Well, Zechariah's Christmas hymn is called the Benedictus, Latin for blessed. His song begins with these words, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel." Zechariah praises the Lord. He praises the God of Abraham. He praises the covenant-making God. Because this is how God relates to his people, through covenant. And that's what a covenant is. A covenant is a relationship with the living God, a relationship with the creator of heaven and earth. At its heart, a covenant is a relationship. It's a relationship that God initiates, a relationship that God establishes. It's a relationship that God guarantees. The Lord made covenant with Abraham, promising to be Abraham's God and the God of his descendants forever. John received the sign of that covenant when he was circumcised. God made a covenant with David, King David, promising that one of his descendants would be king over Israel, over the throne of Israel forever. Well, in his song, Zechariah praises the Lord of Israel because he remembers his covenant and because the Lord was about to act for his covenant people. Zechariah sings of the Lord visiting his people. He sings of the Lord raising up a horn of salvation from the house of David for his people, of redeeming his people and saving his people out of mercy for his people. What Zechariah is singing about is Jesus. Because that is what any true Christmas carol is about. Jesus. Because in Jesus, God has visited his people. He has come to his people in person, born to Mary, the Son of Mary, and the Son of God, a descendant of King David, and therefore King Messiah, Christ. And this King, King Jesus, has come to save. He's come to redeem. He's come to forgive you of your sin, because you're a sinner. Now, I know for some of you that sounds harsh and it sounds judgmental, but it's true. If you fail to love just once, you're a sinner. If you fail to love, you sin. And sin is like a darkness. It's like a darkness within you, a darkness within your heart, a darkness within your soul, a darkness that spreads. The more sin, the more darkness. And not only within you, but around you. And this darkness within us and around us blinds us to God, blinds us to the truth of God, of His person, of His presence. The darkness separates us from God and keeps us from God. In the darkness, we are lost. In the darkness, we're dead. But the light has come. Christmas celebrates the coming of the light. It celebrates the invasion of the dawn. And Zechariah sings of it. Listen to verse 78 again. This is verse 78. Because of the tender mercy of our God, whereby the sunrise shall visit us from on high, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. Though we sit in darkness, the sun has risen. Jesus was born, shining light into the darkness of the world, your darkness, the darkness of your heart, and upon the shadow that looms over us all, the shadow of death, a shadow that we've all become much more aware of these past few months. Here, Zechariah's song echoes our Old Testament reading from Malachi. Listen to verse 2 from our reading from Malachi again. Malachi 4, verse 2. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. The Son of Righteousness has risen. Jesus was born. Christmas has come. And Jesus has brought healing. His light heals your soul, heals your heart broken by sin, casts away the shadow of death, and establishes covenant with you. And through this light, through the Son of Righteousness, through Jesus, God makes covenant with you. You can enter into relationship with the living God, the creator of heaven and earth, and become His child by faith. In this covenant, you're marked not by circumcision, but baptism. All of this God has done because of His mercy, because of His tender mercy. For mercy is compassion. Mercy is compassion to one in need, where the one in need has no means, no manner, no way of overcoming that need. You can't get out of the darkness. You can't remove the shadow of death. But God has tender mercy toward you in Jesus. And He does so for this end. Listen to the end of verse 79 again. To guide our feet into the way of peace. The Son of Righteousness shines to heal you and also to show you the way. The Son of Righteousness shines to guide you and to guide you into peace. Peace with God. Peace with one another. Eternal peace. Zechariah sings of Christmas. He sings of the Son. But he also sings of his own Son. In Zechariah's song, he sings of John. Listen to verse 76 again. Zechariah sings, "And you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare His ways, to give knowledge of salvation to His people in the forgiveness of their sins." John would prepare God's people for the coming of the light. Imagine being there. Imagine watching Zechariah write, "John is his name," on the tablet. And then seeing this one who could not speak for almost a year suddenly burst into song, one who had no voice suddenly sing blessing unto the Lord, one who was there and not there, suddenly singing praises to God. Imagine then hearing the song, hearing about the Lord visiting his people, saving his people. Imagine hearing the song of the sun rising and about this baby just circumcised being called a prophet. And imagine hearing all of this without standing on this side of Christmas and Easter, the side of Christmas and Easter that we stand on, knowing what happened. So that helps to understand the reaction. Listen again to the reaction in verse 65. And fear came on all their neighbors. They had just witnessed God at work. They'd witnessed God at work at the birth of John, in the song of Zechariah, and they were afraid. But they certainly talked about it. Word spread, as word often does. And those who were there and those who heard about it pondered and wondered, what does it mean? And they asked this question, what then will this child be? What then will this child be? Well, this child, John, will be one who would point to an even greater child, an even greater miracle, an even greater impossibility made possible. The Son of Righteousness, the light of the world, who would bring healing, born at Christmas, Jesus. Celebrate his coming with joy and peace.